The United States Forest Service was officially created as an agency in 1905. However, unofficially, the U.S. Forest Service existed since 1891 under another name, the Forest Reserves, under the U.S. Department of the Interior. It wasn't until 1905 that the Forest Reserves transitioned to the care of the Department of Agriculture and changed the agency name to the U.S. Forest Service. The 193 million acres of national forests and grasslands managed by the U.S. Forest Service accounts for nearly 25% of America's public lands. The U.S. Forest Service shares responsibility working in concert with state and local agents for the stewardship of about 500 million acres additionally of non-federal, rural, and urban forests. The agency manages approximately 20% of the nation's commercial forest land, provides home for about half of the big game animals in the country, permits grazing for about 3.5 million cattle and sheep, maintains the world's largest road system, and consisting over 250,000 miles of roads, and manages and maintains over 100,000 miles of trails, along with over one-third of the nation's wilderness preservation system lands, which includes 75% of the nation's wilderness areas in the lower 48 states. The agency also manages over 3 million acres of lakes and reservoirs, as well as over 83,000 miles of streams. The types of lands managed by the U.S. Forest Service are mostly public lands, which include national forests, grasslands, and public parks. The structure of the U.S. Forest Service is as such. There's the Office of the Chief, and under the Office of the Chief, there's the External Affairs Officer, Law Enforcement Investigations Office, Civil Rights Office, and International Programs Office. Underneath those, there is 5 other offices, which include the Deputy Chief of Business Operations, Deputy Chief of National Forest System, the Chief Financial Officer, Deputy Chief of Research and Development, and the Deputy Chief of State and Private Forestry. The U.S. Forest Service has initiated and supported various important acts and laws as well. A list of the currently in effect acts are as follows: 1891, the Forest Reserves Act; 1897, the Sundry Civil Appropriation Act, also known as the Organic Act; the 1905 Transfer Act; the 1911 Weeks Law; the 1937 Bankhead-Jones Farm Tenant Act; the 1960 Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act; the 1964 Wilderness Act; the 1966 National Historic Preservation Act; the 1969 National Environmental Policy Act; the 1970 Clean Air Act; the 1972 Clean Water Act; the 1973 Endangered Species Act; the 1976 National Forest Management Act; the 1976 Resource Conservation Recovery Act; and the 1980 Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act. There was also an unofficial 1957 Act, which was the Operation Outdoors, also known as a 5-year action program designed to build new, expand existing, and refurbish old campgrounds in the national forest to accommodate the rising populations of visitors to the national forests throughout the 1960s. To find out more about state and local laws, you can either go to www.fs.fed.us in order to learn about the Forest Service laws online, or you can go to any U.S. Forest Service office, like we did when we went to the U.S. Forest Service main office for the Colville National Forest in Colville, Washington.
Franklin Pemberton, I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the Colville National Forest. We manage 1.1 million acres of National Forest System lands in Northeast Washington. We manage for multi-use, so that means clean water, recreation, timber, grazing, you name it, and we do that with world-class science.
With Frank Pemberton as our guide, we decided to go visit around the Colville National Forest. We were able to stop and see different areas that had suffered through forest fires. Some of the forest fire areas that we had witnessed were very, very severe forest fires, and some of them even required smoke jumpers in order to fight them. Now, what those smoke jumpers are is basically parachuters who shoot into areas that are very difficult to access. And they're highly trained, and it is actually a U.S. Forest Service operated program since 1939. As we continued our journey, we stopped by Camp Groudon, which is a historical site that was run by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s and early 40s. It was actually one of the first camps that caused the building of different things like dams, roads, a lot of the different trails, and also power lines during the Great Depression. The Civilian Conservation Corps was one of the programs to get people back to work. Roosevelt actually implemented this program, amongst others, to get people back to work, and including the Civilian Conservation Corps, which actually earned up to $1 a day. The only requirements were they had to send money back home to their families. At least 25% of their paycheck had to go back to their families. Throughout the Pacific Northwest, as well as through other parts of the United States, the Civilian Conservation Corps also contributed to the logging efforts, which have continued through today. However, the methods for logging have changed, where it used to be things like clear cutting and just decimating the growth. Instead, what they do is they have select cuts, where they just select which trees to cut, which areas to thin out in order to maintain fire safety standards. A lot of controversy is within this logging effort, as many people think, oh, they're still logging, so they're still trying to destroy the environment. Well, that's not entirely the case. As you can tell, if you thin out the trees, it's a whole lot less chance of getting treetop fires. Instead, you get the natural fires, which actually stimulates the growth of the forest that doesn't necessarily decimate the trees. It burns around the lower trunks of the trees and opens up seeds for new growth. A lot of the old roads that the Civilian Conservation Corps initially installed throughout the National Forest have been used even through till today. Many of the roads that we use today are the natural roads that were built in the 1930s and 40s for forest maintenance. The U.S. Forest Service has contributed on an international level as well. They have contributed through forest research, providing 67 different national research facilities in the United States, as well as an international research facility in Costa Rica. This has contributed to the international research of maintaining forests, as well as safe camping, hunting, fishing, all those different types of practices that many countries have ignored up until today. It is through many efforts of the United States Forest Service that our research has advanced to the point that it has today. We are so grateful to them for our forests, for the opportunity to learn about them, jobs, as well as the opportunity to have recreation and fun. We cannot wait to experience more time in the Colville National Forest.
We have managed this forest since 1907. It was created by Theodore Roosevelt in 1907 and has been managed to meet the public's needs for well over 100 years.